And her name is Dawn. On the 23rd of March 2010 she was born. She's got half a heart, yes you heard that right. You're looking at Supergirl fighting with all her might. So stick around and you will hear the amazing story about my girl right here.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Archery Adventures. If you're new here, my name is Jade-Marie and I'm the mother to almost 9-year-old Dawn-louise who has hypoplastic left heart syndrome. If you didn't know already, February is Heart Month and we've been making a series of videos to raise awareness for her condition and her life with it. In today's video, I really want to focus on going to school with HLHS, what it means as a parent and what it means to the child as well. One of the biggest hurdles we've had to overcome with her joining school is teachers and their understanding of her condition. She started school when she was 3.5 years old. She started half days and then in year R went up to full days. She's now in her 6th year of schooling, so we've been at this a while now. And it all started off really good before her last surgery because it was very obvious that she was sick because she was in deterioration stages. She really needed to have her next surgery and her life was very hard, so they definitely took it very seriously compared to the later years, which I'll get onto in a moment. And she did end up having her 4th surgery while she was in year R, and they had to deal with her coming back to school after surgery and being careful that she didn't pick up any bugs or be pulled about by her class friends because her sternum had to be fully healed, but then it also can still bruise quite badly. So this was all stuff that we really had to take into account. And they were really great with her the first few years. And then she went into I think it was when she got into year 2 that things started to go a little bit bad. So one of the problems that we had was that as she was moving over to the new class and they did their taster days before they actually moved into the next year over summer, the first thing that the teacher said to me was, do you know what? She looks amazing. I was expecting her to look so sick. And that's the problem. Dawn-louise's condition is an invisible disability. You can't see it. She has scars, she has cyanose lips, but those are the only signs outside of her body of how severe her condition is. Now, obviously, if you see a child that looks so well, you don't realise that she actually has a chronic terminal illness. It is going to kill her at some point, which is extremely painful, but people don't realise this. And even when you tell them, they find it very hard to believe. Whereas if I said that she had cancer, everyone knows how serious that is, and they would not for a second question the severity of it. But with HLHS being such a rare condition, only people that have actually been affected by it seem to know about it, and that's why these videos are also really important. I want a greater understanding of what these conditions are, what congenital heart defects are, and what they really mean for the person living with them and also their families and those around them. Everyone is affected by it when the baby is born with these conditions, but people just don't take it as severe as they should. And sadly, CHD actually kills 2 times more children than all childhood cancers combined. So it is important that people start to realise the severity, because just because somebody looks well doesn't mean they are. For example, I myself have asthma, which is not the worst thing in the world to have, but it does also affect my life quite severely in the fact that if I don't have my asthma pumps and I had an asthma attack, I would need help very, very quickly and it would become very severe. Day-to-day life, I'm perfectly fine, whereas Dawn-louise has struggles day to day. And I need people to understand that just because she looks well does not mean she is. Sadly, teachers just do not want to take this on board. They don't want to do their own research, and sometimes they just think you're being an overbearing, overprotective bubble wrap mum. And I'm not, although I have considered rubbing her in bubble wrap. She falls over a lot. And actually her new teachers make the same joke now because they have to deal with patching her up. So yeah, it is very important that you really stress how severe these conditions are to the school, or they are not going to take it on board. If you sit there and go, oh, she's actually doing great and best year of her life, they're going to think things are getting better. When it's like this, they do get worse as time goes on. So it is important that we do not forget how severe their condition is, even when they are doing well. It's important to celebrate the milestones, but be prepared for the worser days as well. Unfortunately, one of the biggest obstacles of going to a school with 40 children per class is the bugs. They are not just a pain for us, they are seriously life-threatening. If Dawn-louise gets a cold, it can very quickly become a chest infection, and these chest infections have her in ambulances and off to hospital because she will require oxygen. If it hits her lungs hard enough, she won't be able to breathe properly. So it is very important that we know what illnesses are going around the school and whether she needs to come home or not. One of the illnesses that she does get sent home for every single time is hand, foot and mouth. She's never had it herself, but when the school has cases going around, they phone me immediately and they have her sent home. This way we can protect her health, because without it, going to school is pointless. Another thing to be mindful of is the nasal flu vaccines. Now, everyone used to be given flu injections, but now children of a certain age, and I think it's up to teens, I could be wrong though because Dawn-louise isn't allowed them, nasal spray vaccines because she's on aspirin, and the mix of the two can cause a condition called Ray's syndrome. This is a very, very serious illness that in Dawn-louise's case could end her in a coma or worse, death. This is not being morbid, it is just fact. It could end her life. So it is very important that when illnesses and infections and injections all go around the school, we have a fully prepared care plan for her. So when the nasal sprays go around, it is important that the day of and the day after they are done, Dawn-louise does not attend school, as there are so many children having it that day, and all they have to do is cough or sneeze for that to be spread. Now, if every single child in the school coughed, that ups her chance by hundreds of getting Ray's syndrome. But saying that, it's very important that Dawn-louise stays protected. She does have the flu injection every single year, and she has it before the school. She has to have it at least 2 weeks before the school does. Otherwise, when the flu vaccine gets given in school, she has to miss 2 weeks. It takes 2 weeks for a flu vaccine to actually take effect. Another big struggle of school is bullying. Unfortunately, when Dawn-louise was in year 3, she faced the worst year of bullying in her life. It became physical, and she was actually pinned up against the wall by her throat. It was extremely hard to hear this because Dawn-louise already has low oxygen. If they had cut off her oxygen completely, she's at risk of brain damage, and her heart is put at risk by that also. So unfortunately, we did have to make the decision after that happened to move her to a better school because the lack of care at the previous school was appalling and her life was put in danger many times. And they failed to realise the seriousness of every single incident. In fact, when I brought up the incident of her being physically bullied, they said they were an all-inclusive school. That is not okay. No child, especially one with such a severe illness, should ever come to that kind of harm, especially as young as in year 3. Thankfully, the new school has been incredible, and I cannot stress it enough. Find the school that you are comfortable with, one that you know is going to take care of your child. It is so easy to just go for one in the catchment area, go for one close, make it easy, but the one that's closest to you isn't always what's best for your child, and you have a right to go outside of the catchment area if their medical needs deem it necessary. Thankfully, we had doctors back our decision to move, which helped us move to one outside of a catchment area. Another really hard thing about bullying is that Dawn-louise's illness is only really visible when she doesn't have her clothes on. Now, unfortunately, with her being so young, when they change for PE, they all do it in the same room, which means that 39 other children will see her scars. And if they have never been in her class before, this will be the first time they've ever seen so many scars on a child. It's safe to say they're going to ask questions, so it is important that you build up their courage and their self-confidence to be able to talk about it, because it is really hard if they're not prepared for these questions. Before the year starts, we always sit down and have a long conversation about any worries or concerns that she has about moving up into a new school year. If there's anything that she doesn't want to talk about and what she is comfortable talking about. Thankfully, she is very confident talking and showing her scars. She is happy to explain what is wrong with her heart, and she is very happy and very proud of who she is. In fact, during SCHD Awareness Week, she made a poster. All she wanted to do was put it up in the class. But then when she got there and asked to do so, we asked her if she'd like to speak up in front of the whole class about what the poster was about. So she did. She proudly stood up with all of her class friends and told them all about her heart and what CHD Awareness Week is for. All heart families treat their heart warrior differently. In my approach, I prefer to be completely honest with Dawn-louise and how she got her scars and why her heart is the way it is. Other families tend to use other suggestions, calling the scars a zipper or a shark bite. Now, the reason that I don't personally agree with that is when the children are telling other children, oh, I got bit by a shark, okay, it might be a cool story, but that isn't helping the children to understand. And I really think that through understanding, we become aware of each other and then more tolerant of each other as well. So I do prefer to be honest and have Dawn-louise actually tell her friends that she had surgery. Because at the end of the day, not only is she then showing that children can have surgeries and be left with scars, she's showing that she's brave and proud of who she is, and she's realising that it is okay to talk about these things. I think it's very important to instill that in heart warriors, because they are going to face this the rest of their life. And when you use a thing like a shark bite as the story behind it, eventually the kids are going to be old enough to be like, well, how did that happen and why did that happen? And they can question it more. So if you're going to have a friend that's going to last throughout the school years, I think it's more important that they really understand what is actually going on with your child. For example, my daughter has a friend and she only met her last year and she takes such great care of her, and I honestly was never expecting it. It is so incredible, and I'm so thankful that Dawn-louise does have such good friends, because she has a little friend, and anytime that Dawn-louise is cold, she'll ask the teacher if Dawn-louise can have a blanket to help her stay warm. If Dawn-louise's bottle is empty, she reminds her to fill it up, and when they're out playing, if Dawn-louise falls down, she goes over immediately and checks to see if she's okay and if she needs any help from the teacher, because sometimes when she bleeds, she needs to be cleaned up, because it's important that we don't get infections that way either. And yeah, that would have never happened if Dawn said, oh, I got bit by a shark. That only happens because they know that Dawn-louise has an illness and is still fighting the illness to this day, and knows that her life is a little bit different and a little bit harder, and now she has really supportive friends who are growing to understand her, and even though they're quite young, they really have taken on board what Dawn-louise has told them. And when other children come over and ask Dawn-louise, oh, why is your lips blue, or why do you have a scar, her friends will help her to feel confident in sharing her story. So I really do feel like the approach of just being completely honest is much better than coming up with a story that sounds cool. But obviously this is up to each family on their own. It's just the way that we've chosen to do things, and what is best for us. Every family is different, and I cannot stress that enough. Every family is different, and it's completely fine to do it however you see fit. The struggle of going to school is sports day. Now, for the most part, she can take part in almost every activity, but it is a whole day. She does get tired, she may need to rest, and she also can't do any form of contact sports. I'm going to make another video on activities, so I'm not going to explain that all in this one. I'm going to save it for another one, so I'm not overloading you with information. But yeah, she does struggle a little bit because she will always be last in the races, and she will have to miss out on some things. But the school that we have are so good at ensuring that she has a job that makes her feel like she's still part of it. So if she can't take part in, say, basketball, she becomes the tally person, and she loves this because she likes being a little leader. So I think it's very important that even though there are some things that children with heart defects can't do, you can still find a place for them and something that can still make them happy in spite of that. See, Dawn-louise does a lot of things that I never thought she'd be able to do, and those things that she definitely can't do just don't seem as big anymore. But again, I'll talk about that in a different video, so stay tuned and hit the bell, and that will be coming soon. Another struggle is winter. Now, Dawn-louise really struggles when the weather gets cold, so much so that she actually has to use a wheelchair, a snowsuit, a blanket and a hot water bottle just to get to school and back. The weather can really affect her breathing, especially if she gets a cold or any kind of illness that affects her respiratory rate. She gets very tired, she gets very blue, and she really does struggle. So unfortunately, during the very cold months, usually when it's under 10 degrees, so roughly from about late October till late February, she actually has to stay in at break and lunchtime, which is really hard. So it is really important that you find a school that has a lunch club and has somewhere for these children to go, because if they don't, it's going to be extremely hard to make sure that they are kept safe and warm. Now, all heart warriors are different. In Dawn-louise's case, she still really struggles with the cold, where her saturations are so low and her body doesn't regulate temperature well. So for her, this is the safest thing. It's not easy to watch, even from my point of view. I want to see her be out there with all her friends, but unfortunately, it's just not what's right for her, and we have to make those tough decisions over keeping her safe and keeping her happy. So I make sure that I take her in with lots of things that can keep her busy. This year, I actually started buying her origami sets to do at lunchtime, and she really enjoyed learning something new. And then that lunchtime went by so much faster because of it. She also spends all of her lunchtimes in lunch clubs so that she has plenty of time to eat and she isn't getting banged into. She is on anticoagulant medication, so she bruises very easily, and canteens can be very busy, so it is safer for her to have a little bit more time and a little bit more space. Another real struggle is the class size. Unfortunately, we did recently have a little slip in Dawn-louise's care. It has all been taken care of and won't be happening again, but it did mean that Dawn-louise was slightly overlooked because there was something going on in school that day and there were hundreds of kids in one spot, and unfortunately some of her needs weren't met correctly, but thankfully the school are on top of it. They apologised profusely, bless them. It was an accident and it won't happen again, thankfully, because we've made some extra measures to make sure it never happens again. But it is hard. You've got to make this choice between mainstream or special schools. Now, both have their own little pros and cons. One of the biggest concerns with going to a special needs school is that children with mental disabilities can sometimes be aggressive. With Dawn-louise having bruising problems, she could get seriously hurt, which meant that putting her in one of those schools would be quite dangerous for her. And obviously, it's not the other children's fault at all. They're all going through special things. So at the moment, the best thing for her to do is stay in mainstream school. but that does mean that there's 40 children per class, and sometimes children can be overlooked. They take as many measures as they can to look after Dawn-louise correctly, but sometimes it's just a bit too much. And bless them, I completely understand the situation they're in. They work so hard every single day, and you know, they're still children, they're still young, and they need leaders. You know, they can't be completely self-efficient. So it is hard for them. They've got a lot going on every day. So it's important that the school know to double check things with kids like Dawn-louise, because it is important that some things aren't missed, things that could affect their health. Another struggle with school is the fact that Dawn-louise was mentally and developmentally delayed, which means that unfortunately she's always been marked as working towards the grade that she should be. And she works incredibly hard and she makes amazing self-progress, but when it comes to comparing her to her peers, she's always that little bit behind. And I don't know if she's ever going to be classed as average or, you know, higher than average. I just want to make sure that she is comfortable in school and that she is still making improvements, because it's so easy, especially with the way that children are graded in school. It's very easy to start comparing your child to other children. And I have to take a step back and be like, well, Dawn-louise has gone through so much at such a young age. You know, she's had all these delays, she's had years of therapy, years of physio. She is going to be behind, and we can't push things too far. We have to allow her to grow on her own as much as she can. She does really well in school. She's just that little bit under what they call average. And unfortunately, that is just something we have to deal with. There's no way to really change it. She studies at home, she studies at school, she works really hard, she's doing her best, and really that is all you can ask for. Another thing that used to be a really big struggle but isn't so much anymore is making friends. People used to struggle to make friends with Dawn-louise at her old school because she couldn't keep up if they were playing like games of tags and things. But as she's getting older, those games are sort of dying down a bit now, and she's able to make better connections because it isn't all relying on physical play. She's made some really amazing friends. They really understand her. They really defend her and care for her. And I'm so thankful that she has those friendships, and I do hope that they continue. It is very hard to be the child who is different. So I think there's something to be said for Dawn-louise to make friends with people who are just, you know, normal, and she's not left feeling like she's left out. It is very hard as a parent to know that your child is the only one in this class of 40 who is severely ill. They might be the only one in the school, although there probably is at least a few others in the school that have illnesses, whether it's like severe asthma, allergic reactions, things like that. I think that it's very important that we find children who do understand them, but also friends that are different to them, because then they can build off each other and learn from each other. And I'm really comfortable in where Dawn-louise is with her friendships at the moment. So I think I've covered some of the main points of going to school. If you have any questions about it, you can drop them below, and myself or Dawn-louise will answer those for you in a future video. At the end of this month, we are doing a massive Q&A with the both of us. We'll be answering every single question we've got throughout the month. So if you do have anything, drop it below, or you can follow us on Instagram and message us there as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and hit the bell, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.
Everybody gives you advice, yeah, on how to live your life, Don't you know that life is full of surprises? You better realize,